Hailed as one of the best in the series, and one of the best video games of all time, Metal Gear Solid 3 took a giant leap back in time and told the origin story of Jack, otherwise known better as Big Boss. With new survival mechanics and a beautiful cinematic story set around the emotional events of 1964, Snake Eater changed the stealth genre once more and revolutionized militaristic survival. Here I'd like to discuss the differences and meanings behind the three main regions box arts: Europe, North America, and Japan. The European cover features Naked Snake in his classic stance equipped with his trusty handgun and knife combo. The various shades of green show the setting of outdoors and nature, the forest and the greenery in the wilderness of Selinoyarsk, an area located in the South Russian border. Snake Eater brought in the new ability to having to blend into your surroundings through the use of the camouflage system and being able to use your environment to your advantage. Snake would need to hide in bushes, crawl through the long grass, or take evasive actions in trees and swamps. This entry added in a new level of stealth that relied on patience and strategy as well as choice. To me, the greens also seem to signify the uniforms that many of the characters wear, not just the camo that Snake must don to stay alive. Most of the main cast wear green military uniforms, which isn't seen as much in the previous games due to them mainly being mercenaries rather than official military groups, and being the main characters they tended to look more unique in their own ways. But green in this game seems to play a larger, more prominent role. The colour green is also used to represent renewal and growth, which plays a big part with Snake in becoming Big Boss later down the line. Growth also represents the nurturing relationship that Jack had with the boss, the two growing together and developing feelings for one another that goes above and beyond love. She made him what he is, before, during, and even after her death by his hands. On the other side, green is also heavily related to money and finances, which leads to greed and jealousy, which is what Colonel Volgin, the main antagonist, had in abundance. The philosopher's legacy was his ultimate goal, attempting to use it to overthrow the Soviet Union. This greed and lust for power eventually became his downfall. The image of Snake is a noticeable piece by longtime series artist Yoji Shinkawa, who had worked on the art and designs for the series, as well as Kojima's earlier game Zone of the Enders. It's clear that one of the biggest inspirations behind Big Boss's earlier character models was of Sean Connery in Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. But in this, the young version of Big Boss was Kurt Russell's character Snake Plissken, which was also used as an alias for Solid Snake in Sons of Liberty, from the movies Escape from New York and Escape from LA. With Big Boss's green figure contrasting sharply to the white background, it does set up some deep symbolism. For a start, there are several noticeable green and white marks to the right hand side, which are the petals that appear during the final battle with the boss, in that emotional farewell scene that signified the end of Jack. These petals, belonging to the white grass lilies, would also show up in later games, showing the big impact they had on him. Flowers with white petals are traditionally used in memorial services, which again gives meaning towards the death of the boss and the death of Jack, but the white also goes on to mean sympathy, either from the boss in making Snake killer with no alternative, or by Snake knowing that she was put in such a position in the first place. With Snake already having his eye patch and the boss's bandana, it's clear that this is after he has sustained his eye wound and now has the classic and iconic look of Big Boss that fans have come to know and love, albeit in a younger version. The fact that there are white petals floating by him makes it either feel that this is taking place during the battle in which he's fighting his old mentor, or is happening afterwards and he's thinking of her, either haunted by the memory of the assassination he was forced to perform, or thinking that no matter what, the boss will always be with him. Everything they did together, the CQC techniques they developed, the tactics and training, the emotional bonds they forged, or even the will of the boss that he intends to pass on. The boss will always be with him. Straight up with the North American cover, we see that the subtlety in the artwork has been replaced with very bright and in-your-face colours through its use of reds, oranges and browns and yellows. This seems to be referencing the instant where Colonel Volgin fired a US-made rocket at a Soviet military base, causing events to transpire into Operation Snake Eater. The explosion was huge and even blasted Snake, who was recovering from his wounds miles away. There are also the soldiers in the bottom who would have been caught in the blast, little to Volgin's care. It's worth noting that this is the only Metal Gear game in which an actual nuclear blast occurs, and very early on. In a more interpretive idea, These colours also make it look like some kind of hellscape, going through a nightmare, which is what Snake did, having been sent on this mission. The boss, more than a mother, more than a lover, transcending beyond emotions between man and a woman. Developing as humans and soldiers, together he was ordered to go there and eliminate her. To him it was a mission that changed and haunted him forever. Disillusioned with the CIA, with America, and the world itself. This mission set him off on the start to becoming one of the world's most infamous and legendary mercenaries, Big Boss. This was his first step through hell. It's interesting to note that on all largely released covers of the game, they show Snake after the events of his capture, which led to his losing his right eye after Ocelot grazed him with a bullet. After his escape, he meets up with Eva and gains his iconic eye patch. The American cover, this is excluding the Japanese shareholder and South Korean covers due to them essentially being recolored versions. This is the only one to show Snake before he lost his eye, and subsequently he has no eye patch. However, it seems though that they are also the only ones to have his eventual only working eye not shown. When hiding from the guards behind the tree, Snake is facing left, so his left eye is hidden, and in the picture above, Snake's left eye is again obscured by the shadowing of the artist. If it was the other way, then we would all understand it was a reference foreshadowing his eventual wound. Even with Snake hiding, I get that if we only see his patched eye, then it would look a little odd as opposed to seeing both, but they could have had him facing the other way. I like how they do show him before he attains the eye patch, but with both images hiding his only working eye, just seems like an odd design choice. The fact that there's a tree in the middle with Snake hiding behind it from the guards says quite a lot about what the game is like. Instead of being in a facility like Outer Heaven, Zanzibar Land, Shadow Moses or Big Shell, we're outside in the wilderness, the forests of Russia. The soldiers in the background are hunting for Snake, who is using the trees to hide, not a facility or a base, which adds great difficulty level due to being out in the open so much. This does also reference the newly added camouflage system, which the players must utilise to stay alive and hidden, bringing a new level of stealth. The image of Snake above also seems like he's hiding in the trees, skulking and blending in to outsmart the enemy, ready to strike or escape as the opportunity arises. Of all the covers that were mainly released, this one is the biggest difference since it's not the usual kind of artwork by Yoji Shinkawa. The image above most likely is one of his, but the main portion of the cover is entirely different. It's not a bad thing, I do like there being big changes between the covers, but this gives off less of a classy and elegant feel, and more Americanized action hero, with its guns and explosions, reminiscent of movies like Sylvester Stallone in Rambo, and Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando. The Japanese version is very much like the European version, with its stylized artwork by Yoji Shinkawa contrasting sharply against the white background. But there are two main noticeable differences in that the colour scheme has changed from shades of green to shades of browns, and it isn't just Snake standing alone, behind him is the boss. Even though I prefer the European cover, I find this one actually has more symbolism to it, with deeper meanings. Having the boss on the cover alongside him represents the clear relationship within the two. They both look visually similar in colour, style and clothing, which makes you think that they are on the same side, which is the case at first until the twist during the Virtuous mission. But sometimes the case is that having two protagonists on the cover such as this can sometimes be misrepresented and misleading, and often designers don't like to use that. They prefer more to opt to having an opposition, the protagonist to the antagonist, a clear duality between the two. It's not uncommon to have two protagonists on the cover, but in this case it's a very awkward situation given the context of the story. There isn't a rivalry or bad bond between the two, these are just two people. Two soldiers forced into this position by the times and the political situations of the world. If they don't do this, then things will be much worse off. One thing to notice is that one of the main features of Snake is his eye patch that covers his blinded right eye, but that also seems to apply somewhat to the boss here, who also has her right eye obscured by the shading. Now it could just be that it's the art style at play and there's nothing more to it than that, but to me it seems to show that the two are very similar in creating another comparison of the two. They grew and learned from each other and shared their lives, imparting thoughts and ideals as well as emotions. The boss's long, free-flowing hair also seems to look somewhat like Snake's bandana blowing in the wind, and they're both wearing sneaking suits. It's not the regular camouflage he wears throughout, given by the pattern on the sleeves, torso and legs. And remember, at the time, sneaking suits weren't common. It was only the boss that mainly wore hers, and Snake found his in a locker in the facility.
Those are some funky clothes you're wearing. It's called a sneaking suit.
Sneaking suit? What's that all about?
I'm not sure, but it looks like what the boss was wearing.
The shift in change from the greens to browns may not be the most visually pleasing to look at, especially for a video game that really needs to catch your eye, but it does still signify nature and the outdoors of the woods and the cliffs of the Russian base. This time, instead of the bright colours being vibrant and glowing with life, it's more showing its age, the passing of time and how things are coming to an end. The boss and Snake's time together is coming to an end, with the completion of the mission. Snake, being the man he used to be, is coming to an end. The world as they know it is slowly dying and will be reborn into something much, much different. Being set in the 1960s where technology was still making strides in things we find basic today, a lot of photographs still had a sepia shade to them, and was shown well during flashback type cutscenes throughout the course of the game. Much like with the theme of aging on this cover, the colours also make it look like an old photograph, a memento of the time that Snake and the boss shared together. The white background more strikingly resembles the white field in which they fought, even stronger now that given the boss has a physical presence here, and with their final battle comes renewal, not just for them, but for the world. The final thing to notice is that much like the European cover, there are white petals of the grass lilies floating about, but this time, there are more of them. Again, instead of being the vibrant green, they're brown and shifting colour, much like how they did in the game when the boss died, all the petals around them turned red. The haunting images of the two surrounded by petals will always be a memorable scene that really show the pure emotion that Snake and the boss held for each other. Like I said in the European version, the petals seem to represent the memories of the boss, and giving him comfort that the boss will always be with him in some way through their time together. Having her place behind him this time feels like her spirit was with him, much like the sorrow was. After all, the sorrow's final words to the boss were, "The spirit of the warrior will always be with you."
They'll tell you